Welcome to the tarot for June 2026. Summer is almost upon us, and I have been trying to decide if the world is actually as crazy as it appears, or if it's just YouTube that is crazy. When I'm doing dishes, chatting with family, or doing laundry, all is quiet and everything unfolds in a simple, ordinary way. But the minute I open up the computer and get on YouTube, the entire world goes upside down. And, stress, uncertainty, confusion are everywhere. Even reading the newspaper does not elicit the feeling of being on a runaway merry-go-round, or maybe the tilt-a-whirl at the carnival that YouTube creates. So anyway, I digress. There were lots of questions to consider this month, and I ended up asking about the Iran war long-term, our history, the New York Stock Exchange, our schools, and the threat of a returning Dust Bowl from the 1930s. So let's begin. The questions asked were, number one, what will be the long-term results of the Iran war on the future of the U.S.? I thought maybe, something good, or we should know if it was something really awful. So, question number two, what do the cards have to say about the history we have been taught versus all the information coming out now about places like Sumer, Tartaria, and the many ancient archaeological sites being uncovered? Number three, what is the future of the New York Stock Exchange? Number four, what advice does the animal kingdom have for us about schools and teaching our children? And number five, what advice does the plant kingdom have regarding the El Nino that's forming and the possible return of Dust Bowl conditions in the U.S.? So the cards drawn were, number one, the Nine of Swords. Seems like we've seen this a lot lately. Question number two, little card, the White Wall. Card number three got the Chariot, which is number 7 in the major arcana. Question number 4 from the animal deck got the Spider. And question number 5 from the plant astrology oracle got Milk Thistle. So let's go a little deeper here and look at the questions and what the cards say. Question number 1, what will be the long-term results of the Iran war on the future of the U.S.? And the card drawn here was the Nine of Swords, a card with a very sharp message. We've seen this card plenty of times in the last few years, but evidently we still need to pay attention to its message. It is the card of living in a nightmare and suddenly waking in shock to the truth of our situation, the conflicts that have not been resolved, and a need to move beyond the thinking that got us here. It's a card that has no more room for gray areas. The situation is now black and white. If nothing is done, the nightmare will be cemented in place, and the thinking of humanity will remain too prejudiced and too divided to find its way out of the mess. In looking at this card, you see someone who appears to have awakened suddenly, like sat bolt upright in bed from a disturbing dream. The figure is sitting up in bed with both hands over his face as if trying to block out an awful dream experience. The Nine of Swords says that we are at the end of a cycle that involves quote, the darkening of old ideas and the dimming of old horizons. The darkening of old ideas and the dimming of old horizons. The hands over the face call us to stop hiding from what is happening and look at the changing situation and the new knowledge it's bringing. It tells us to let our capacity for insight and intuition carry us forward, and it warns that we will need some time to get used to the new situation, so don't try to hurry. The wall in the background is entirely black and it has 9 swords hanging on it. Black not only represents the need to deal with the unknown and the shadow side of life, it calls for something new, a creative approach to the world and the consciousness that runs it. This is a reminder that we will not succeed in dealing with the situation if we don't change our consciousness. And if we don't, the war is likely to change it for us. Since our question is about the long-term results of the Iran war, this change of consciousness may have hidden benefits in that we would all be awake and finally able to move toward a better future, but it would still be a serious shock. Shock is something that's very hard on the body-mind system and something that often results in overreaction and panic thinking. So snap decision-making that turns out badly. Why? Because people in shock are not paying attention to what is important. Let me say that again. People in shock are not paying attention to what is important. Years ago, my sister was in a gasoline fire, almost burned to a crisp. What was she focused on in those moments on the ride in the ambulance? She was focused on her pet bird in the bird cage at home. So people in shock get caught in some irrelevant detail. In addition, this card signals the end of a cycle, and that alone brings an avalanche of change that must be adapted to. Then we have those swords. The swords are the suit of thought, of intelligence, and the intellect. And the fact that there are 9 swords on the wall tells us that every area of thinking, every silo, academic discipline, every cultural foundation has reached the end of its useful life, and it needs fresh ideas in order to survive and evolve. It calls for us to begin looking for the early points of light that are always the start of a new pattern, even though the information behind those lights is frequently denied or ridiculed at first, or just plain ignored. The 9 of Swords encourages us to seek fresh mental pastures and to stretch our minds far beyond the old thinking. The sculpture of the Gemini twins that has been carved into the sides of the bed represents an acknowledgement that this stretching and wake up will cause chaos and some inner conflict at first, but it promises a whole new experience that borders on the sublime. If we can just get past our fears and old thinking, that is. The twins symbolize a period in which we may have to walk in 2 worlds. I think we've said that before. We may have to walk in 2 worlds. And each one vastly different. While the old world disintegrates, and we have to watch that happen, which is kind of painful. And the new one is being adapted to. It also warns that there will certainly be temporary blockages and obstacles along the way, but we are not to get discouraged. The quilt on the bed is covered with roses and all of the various constellations of the zodiac. The message here backs up the idea that our understanding of the entire world and even the whole cosmos will change. And we need to prepare for this with sober deliberation. The roses remind us to practice love in all situations, including and especially the thorny ones. It tells us to bloom and grow and cultivate a commitment to ongoing personal and civilizational growth. The zodiac symbolizes that every aspect of life needs to be reconsidered. This means a rethinking of all the rules and laws of governance, what to do with your money, and what you may have to learn in order to use the money of the future. It requires that you reevaluate your work in the world, what to do with your time and energy, who to connect with, and how you will feed yourself, how much responsibility you'll take, and how far you're willing to go in your efforts to develop yourself. As mentioned, the number 9 is a signal that we are at the end of a cycle. It reminds us to focus on what we have achieved, hang on to our abundance, expand our tolerance, and prepare for something new. It symbolizes that the thinking, the explanations, the theories, the ideologies, and current forms of knowledge have been pushed to their limit, and they can no longer be maintained without causing great stress and affliction. The 9 of Swords is known as the Lord of Cruelty and Despair. Key words for the 9 of Swords are climax, intensity, conflict, period of justice, need for adaptation, nightmare, news and communication, transitions, fanaticism, malice, facing psychopathic behavior, well-founded suspicions, and distress. Question number 2. What do the cards have to say about the history we've been taught versus the information now coming out about places like Sumer, Tartaria, and the many ancient archaeological sites that are being uncovered? So I have a very old deck of tarot cards that I've had for 45 years. It's very small and it's easy for me to shuffle them. And it has one card in it that does not appear in the bigger, more recent decks. See how much bigger they are? So when I was first studying tarot all those decades ago, my teacher taught that this card, which was a white blank, was called the white wall. She said it meant stop. Do not go any further. Do not ask any more on that topic because there is a key lesson that needs to be learned, understood, and integrated in order to expand and grow in wisdom. In all the months and years of reading tarot cards here online, I have never pulled the white wall, but it came up in answer to this question about our history. So I dropped the question and will simply say that in 45 years of working with the tarot, I have only pulled the white wall maybe 4 or 5 times. And every time it came up, the lesson it referred to was very close. It's too late to avert the lesson. That's what this card is saying. So I'm just going to stop and let go of that question. And, I'll just say that we may be about to learn something about our history that will change us or affect us in a very deep and powerful way. Question number 3. What is the future of the New York Stock Exchange? So I'm not a financial advisor, and understanding the world of finance is not my strong suit. However, one of the things I saw when I was with the Robes was that the New York Stock Exchange was so changed in size and scope of operation that for all practical purposes, it did not really survive for very long after 2025. What did survive was a new form of money and a new way of thinking about and handling money. Since so many of us have pensions, savings, and 401k accounts that all have their fingers and toes in the stock market, I thought I would ask about its future and see what the cards had to say. And the card I drew here was the Chariot, a major arcana card indicating major and powerful forces pulling and pushing in opposite directions, which will affect the future of the market. When looking at the Chariot, it is immediately clear that there are many complexities involved here. This is one of the more complex cards. A golden-haired figure stands in a cube-shaped chariot made of stone with large yellow wheels. He wears a suit of armor and has a white square on his breastplate. In his right hand, he holds a magic wand, and on his head is a crown with an 8-pointed star on it. Overhead hangs a blue canopy with many, many stars on it, and the sky all around is bright yellow. A sickle moon rests on each shoulder, and a winged sun is shown like a shield on the front of the chariot. Below that winged sun is a lingam and yoni, ancient symbol of sexual energy and the need for balance between and among opposites. In front of the chariot, which is the first thing most people usually see, is a black sphinx on the left and a white sphinx on the right. In the background is a city with large, elegant buildings, a green landscape, and a river. The chariot card indicates a change in direction or location or in processes and practices. However, the fact that the chariot is made of stone symbolizes the long-lasting nature of the stock market and the great foundational power that underpins it. Those gigantic yellow wheels symbolize the market's role in moving society and its economy forward. And the fact that there's no drawbar or reins says that no single individual can control the direction or speed of the market or where it's going to go. All of this suggests that the New York Stock Exchange may change in many ways, but it's still going to be there for some time yet. That chariot is made of stone. The charioteer standing in the chariot represents every individual who has an investment in the market. His golden hair symbolizes the hope, the great hope, actually, that the market will bless him and he will become well-to-do, if not rich. The overhead canopy of bright blue with yellow stars symbolizes subjectivity, personal subjectivity, and the need for each of us to follow our own personal star when it comes to making stock market decisions and investments. Since our question is about the future of the stock exchange, the charioteer and the star-studded canopy tell us that the moods, attitudes, perspectives, and hopes of the investors are what drive the market and keep it alive. Underline, keep it alive. This is a tacit acknowledgement that investors themselves determine the direction, relevance, and therefore the future of the stock market. However, a majority of trades are now carried out using computers and algorithms. Only a small percentage of trades are made by humans anymore. If the investors and their goals and moods are what determine the future of the market, a shrinking number of humans involved in the process hints at a shrinking role of the stock market as we move into the future. This may be why the market I saw with the robes was unrecognizable when compared to its current form. The charioteer holds a magic wand in his right hand, and this represents the goal of every investor to magically turn a small investment into something much bigger. That white square on his breastplate symbolizes that when dealing with that investors are dealing with the physical world of matter, not the spiritual world. It also represents the market's offer of a fair and square chance for anyone to improve his or her finances. The sickle moon on each shoulder kind of looks like an epaulet almost, symbolizes emotion and reminds us that investing one's money carries the risk of losing it. However, that 8-pointed star on the crown is a symbol of success and rebirth. So if you lose, keep going. Rebirth is in the wind here. Together, they tell us that one's fortunes can seriously wax and wane over time, and this is to be expected. But since we are asking about the future of the New York stock market, this says that the fortunes of the stock market itself will also wax and wane and may be reborn as something entirely new. The winged sun on the front of the chariot represents the potential for great rewards and says, nothing ventured, nothing gained. The lingam and yoni add the advice that great success has the potential to release highly creative energies. These are energies capable of changing the entire landscape of life and building great cities where civilizations can advance. The warning that goes with the winged sun brings us face to face with the great challenge of advancement, which is how to advance without destroying Mother Nature. The sphinxes resting in front of the chariot symbolize the mysteries of life, and that includes the mysteries of investing. Is it going to grow, or are you going to win or lose? It also symbolizes the need to integrate our human and animal natures. One sphinx is black, representing the unknown, and the challenge of making choices when you can't see the outcome. The other sphinx is white, representing death, pure intentions, and the need to start over each day. Together, they symbolize the fact that there's no way to get out of the chariot because the chariot represents the path through life. We can influence the direction the chariot goes in, but we cannot escape the results of our choices. The chariot is a card of entangled mysteries involving three main functions of our reality: Father City, Mother Nature, and the human actions that create our future one day at a time. The choices we make today create the path we will walk tomorrow. It says that steering a course through those entangled mysteries and challenges depends on the willingness to decide for ourselves what we will do with our time and money, and then act on those decisions. Humans everywhere around the planet love gambling. They love games of risk, especially those that do not involve the risk of death. So we're always looking for shortcuts in the easy way, but The easy way does not always turn out to be the easy way. Putting one's head in the sand blocks the ability to see the black and white nature of things. And driving one's chariot through life as if it were an endless race is kind of like putting your head in the sand, because it does not allow time to really see what is taking shape around you. The future of the stock market may rest on us and our involvement, but when we step back and look at what is taking shape around us, we should acknowledge the big political and financial changes now unfolding, our changing demographics, what is happening in New York City itself, and the impact of all these changes on us, on big cities, and on big corporations everywhere. The chariot represents karma. It asks us to recognize patterns and learn to make choices that will have a good outcome. Learning to make good decisions is based on information that is found in our black and white reality. The only time difficulty arises is when the decision we want to make is in conflict with what that black and white reality is telling us. Since the New York Stock Exchange was originally set up to allow people to invest in companies they wanted to support and businesses that were producing products people wanted in their lives, this card says that the future of the organization, the New York Stock Exchange, is likely to continue in some form as long as there are companies we want to support and products we want to bring into our lives. If people change, if population numbers drop, if people withdraw from personal involvement in investing, or corporations shrink because the population drops, the New York Stock Exchange will change. But for now, it looks to be a fixture in our lives. Keywords for the chariot are awareness, victory, riot, dispute, change in location, new direction, foundations, will, appetite, providence, prudence, choices, judgment, war, presumption, karma, nature, and environment. Question number 4 is, what advice does the animal kingdom have for us about schools and teaching our children? And the advice here is from the spider, number 43 in the animal medicine deck. Spider, who is very feminine, brings a powerful message and medicine. And as I've mentioned in the past, I'm always surprised by the way the card drawn is such a perfect match to the question asked. The spider was the one who wove the first letters of the alphabet and who taught that it was time for humans to learn to write in order to create detailed records of their progress in evolving themselves. It was said that humans were becoming more and more complex and soon would need more than just pictographs to tell their stories. Something more was needed to share those details and the depths of knowledge so that what they learned might help those in the future or even themselves to maintain themselves. So in almost every part of the world, the spider is known as the weaver of worlds, who demonstrates what it means to weave the web of your own life. One of spider's most powerful messages is, look for alternatives to your present situation. Since our question is asking for advice about schools and teaching our children, this message could well be telling us that we need alternatives to the present system of schools and what we are teaching. Are the schools working well? Are they turning out humans whose potential for genius and greatness has been nurtured? Children grow up to make the decisions that shape the world. And eventually, they are the ones who decide how things will unfold in the later years of their parents' lives. Most children come out of school knowing only how to manipulate a pencil and paper or type on a computer. Do those children understand how things actually work or how to survive in the natural world? Spider tells us that we humans are the balance point between past and future, and she warns against getting out of balance. Are schools producing balanced, creative children who know what is important and what is fluff or illusion? The spider is the guardian of ancient languages and alphabets. She is the protector of modern language and alphabets too, because she knows the power of the word to create the fabric of society. What words are schools using in the modern classroom? Will the children of today be able to continue weaving the fabric of our lives, or will they pull at the threads and unravel everything? Spider warns that what happens in schools and what the children learn will result in either death or rebirth. This small 8-legged insect and the web it weaves symbolize how delicate the process of teaching is, how tender the young mind is, and how important it is to assertively defend that young mind against delusion, damage, and harm. It warns that unused creativity turns into destructiveness and reminds us that life flows eternally from one family circle to the next. And schools are meant to enhance that flow. According to Spider, the main goal of schools and teaching is to teach the young child to walk among the mysteries without easy answers and without closing the mind. It is to open them. Schools are supposed to open them to the infinite possibilities of creation and to encourage them to keep the world spinning. Are schools teaching people to recognize creative opportunities? Do they encourage us to climb out of ruts or be comfortable in those ruts? Do children come out of school feeling afraid and stuck, or excited and powerful? Spider says, pay attention to the reality created by those who emerge from schools, because they will be doing the creating when we are too old and tired to do so. Keywords for the spider are fate, weaving, wheel of life, web of reality, spirals of creativity, ancient language, alphabets, magic, poison, connecting threads, links to past and future, feminine energy, and fabric of society. Question number 5. What advice does the plant kingdom have regarding the El Nino and the possible return of Dust Bowl conditions in the U.S.? And the card drawn here was milk thistle. Number 23 in the Herbal Astrology Oracle. Milk thistle is known as the peaceful warrior. I love that, the peaceful warrior, and is associated with Mars and the moon. It's a very old plant, known and used for centuries as something to lift your spirits, increase breast milk if you're a young mother, and work as a powerful anti-inflammatory for both liver and gallbladder. It was also dried and used to stuff dolls and puppets because the peaceful warrior was seen as protection for young ones. What is a peaceful warrior? It is someone who does not become angry, afraid, or violent. He takes a different path. First, a warrior is always willing to face death in whatever form it appears. You are not a warrior if you cannot face death. Then, instead of reacting badly, a peaceful warrior sizes up the situation, considers as many options as he can think of, decides what results he wants, and then takes some steps to produce the desired results. This requires flexibility, as well as planning and patience. And always there's an effort to avoid physical combat if a way can be found around it. The goal is to get the desired result, not get caught up in fighting that produces an endless loop of vengeance and self-sabotage. Since our question is asking for advice about the possibility of an El Nino and Dust Bowl conditions, the assessment we would likely make would conclude that maybe we're dealing with a drought, a reduction of essential crops, a rise in prices as people compete for those crops. It could also include concern for trees in your area, for wildfires, for your garden, pastures, cows and other grazing animals, your grass, your flowers, and even your job or the value of your home. Taking the path of milk thistle and the peaceful warrior might then involve saving some rainwater if you can, buying hoses or fire extinguishers to have on hand in case of fire, mulching your garden heavily to keep the soil cool and moist, researching ways to bring water to pastures and animals, because there are ways without pumping. Deciding that a yard of perfect green grass is just not realistic at this time. You might think about introducing native plants and grasses that tolerate drought by simply shutting down when there's no rain and then bouncing back when the rains come. You might decide to trim your budget and set aside some money in case of layoffs, or let go of fussing about home values and realize that the house will still be there, but the drought will end. At some point, the drought will end. So in other words, the peaceful warrior does not panic. He prepares for what is coming using common sense. Milk thistle encourages us to let go of insecurity by getting to know Mother Nature. It warns against trying to control what cannot be controlled. And it says, avoid blaming others for the state of affairs. Blame doesn't help. Instead, it advises that we recognize the cycles of nature and develop strategies to accommodate them. It also symbolizes letting go of overreactive, fear-based strategies that turn out in the end to be counterproductive. And they give us also a false sense of growth. So these also turn out to be costly and very impractical in the long run. Yeah, don't overreact. Milk thistle is known to appear when something is happening that is meant to shake up the systems, plural systems. It signals that these systems hinder innovation or slow creativity and sensible options. Are our systems getting in the way of true growth and the evolution of humanity? Is milk thistle telling us that the universe is shaking things up to force us to set up patterns that nurture growth and ongoing development? The final advice of milk thistle is know that what you are not changing, you are choosing. It would be wise to think carefully about what really needs to be changed and what needs a different way of thinking. Perhaps agriculture across the U.S. needs to be done differently. Think about that. If farmers in the agriculture system were not taking responsibility for making sure we had food, what would you do? If our agriculture systems faltered or failed, how would you feed yourself? So that's it for this tarot. Let's do a quick summary of what has been said. So question number 1, what will be the long-term results of the Iran war on the future of the U.S.? And the card drawn here was the 9 of Swords, a card with a very sharp message. It is a card of living in a nightmare and suddenly waking in shock to the truth of the situation, the conflicts that have not been resolved, and the need to move beyond the thinking that got us here. It's a card that has no more room for gray areas. The situation is black and white. If nothing is done, the nightmare will be cemented in place and the path of humanity will remain too prejudiced and too divided to find its way out. The difficulty here is that warnings in every area of life, every silo, every academic discipline, institution, and cultural foundation was ignored. And now everything will have to be dealt with at once. This is the end of a major cycle, and we are encouraged to look, think, and act forward, not backwards. Question number 2 was, what do the cards have to say about the history we have been taught versus the information coming out now about places like Sumer, Tartaria, and the many ancient archaeological sites being uncovered? And like I said, I have a very old deck of tarot cards that I've had for 45 years. It's very small and easy for me to shuffle. So I use this to actually pull cards, and then I get out the big deck to show them to you. So it has this deck has one card in it that does not appear in the bigger, more recent decks. And when I was first studying tarot all those decades ago, the teacher said that card meant stop. Do not go any further. Do not ask anything more on that topic, because there's a key lesson that needs to be learned, understood, and integrated in order to expand and grow in wisdom. So in all the months and years of reading tarot cards here online, I've never pulled the white wall, but it came up in answer to this question about our history. So we're going to leave it right there. And just know that we are facing some sort of major lesson around our history, and it's probably pretty close. Question number 3, what is the future of the New York Stock Exchange? And the card drawn here was the Chariot, which represents a change in direction, change in location, karma, the ability to recognize patterns and avoid the destructive patterns, I should add, and the need to make choices that will have a good outcome. Learning to make good decisions is founded on information that is realistic and up to date. The only time difficulty arises is when the decisions we want to make about our future are in conflict with what that black and white reality is telling us. The New York Stock Exchange was originally set up to allow people to invest in companies they wanted to support and businesses that were producing products that we wanted in our lives. This card says that the future of the stock market is part of the foundation of society, and changes will likely be in things like the name, the location, the money system itself, and how the processes of investing actually work. But it will still be there. Question number 4, what advice does the animal kingdom have for us about schools and teaching our children? And the advice from Spider. Number 43 in the animal medicine deck brings a very powerful message, because Spider was the one who wove the first letters of the alphabet and taught us that it was time for humans to learn to write in order to create records of their progress in evolving themselves. Some of the other animals complained, saying, oh, they already have pictographs. But Spider said humans were becoming more and more complex, and soon would need more than just pictographs to tell their stories, share their knowledge, and all their details. Spider is the weaver of worlds and tells us that not only are humans the connecting link between past and future, but what we teach our children determines what the future will become. According to Spider, the main goal of schools and teaching is to teach the young child to walk among the mysteries without easy answers, and yet without closing their minds. Spider warns us to pay attention to schools and teaching, because the reality created by those who emerge from those schools will create the future we live in when we are too old and too tired to create. Question number 5. What advice does the plant kingdom have regarding the El Nino and the possible return of Dust Bowl conditions in the U.S.? And the card drawn here was milk thistle, number 23 in the Herbal Astrology Oracle. Milk thistle is associated with Mars and the moon. It's a very old plant, known and used for centuries as something to lift your spirits, and especially as a powerful anti-inflammatory for both liver and gallbladder. This card is known as the peaceful warrior. The peaceful warrior does not struggle, doesn't argue, accuse, or blame others for difficulties that arise in life. Instead, it advises that we recognize the cycles of nature and develop strategies to accommodate the reality. Milk thistle is known to appear when something is happening that is meant to shake up the systems that hinder innovation or slow creativity or interfere with sensible options. Milk thistle is said to halt patterns and behaviors that get in the way of true growth and the evolution of man. It tells us, let go of overreactive, fear-based strategies, and it warns against trying to control what cannot be controlled. I don't think we can control the El Nino, okay? But the advice of milk thistle is to remain aware of current events and prepare in ways that allow life to continue as smoothly as possible. So that's all for this month. Thank you for listening, and remember, be ready for a sudden shocking wake up of some kind. Don't worry about the stock market. Pay attention to schools and what they're teaching, and be a peaceful warrior who meets every challenge with a willingness to acknowledge reality as it is, and then prepare. So have a wonderful month. Enjoy the summer and an early happy Father's Day to all the men of the world. I'll see you mid-June in the Look-See or next month in the July Tarot. Take care.